I think it runs deeper than that. I think it serves to show just how desensitized society has become to the plight of migrants, how desensitized it's become to the other. The idea that years of that media coverage, where we saw in Brexit, there was the scaremongering that Turkey might join the EU, or Nigel Farage had that billboard with all these migrants lined up or the like. The idea of migrants itself now being almost a dirty term, a term that evokes controversy, that evokes debate, where we heard on Question Time where people are saying that they go straight to the benefits office or the like. Society has become so desensitized to the idea of people fleeing conflict zones, gathering money to pay smugglers, to make the treacherous journey, knowing they might die on the journey to Europe. They've become so desensitized to it as a result of the political debate over the years that the idea of billionaires sitting in a submarine became something novel. The idea of the plight of these migrants became something, I've heard this before, and they shouldn't even be coming here in the first place. That's not what everybody thought, but the point here being is that desensitization is the tragedy. That society, where once upon a time it would have been shocked by the plight of the migrants, no longer feels that shock anymore. It doesn't move their hearts. And one of the things that was quite interesting was it's not just the idea of the story of the submarine. When you think of the number of coast guards that went out to look for the submarine, the number of planes, the number of technology, the number of governments that spared resources to go and rescue the submarine, and it should have been rescued. I'm not saying it shouldn't have. But when you look at the efforts exerted for the submarine...
And when you contrast that with I'm not sure what the actual... I know there's an investigation pending. The Greek Coast Guard vessel and the conflicting accounts that came out from whether the trawler was in distress, whether it needed help, whether help was given, the role of the Coast Guard and all of that. And just as you say, we had US and Canadian military planes, we had Coast Guard ships and teleguided robots. And that French rescue vessel that came with its own submersible to try and rescue the Titan V. It wasn't, you're right, Sami. This is so right of you. It wasn't just the media coverage in response. It was the search and rescue coverage in response.
And the reason being is not just that their value was in their money. It was in that these billionaires had value in the eyes of society because they were not the other. They were not migrants. They were not the subject of this debate that has dominated politics for the last 10, 15 years as to whether migrants should even be accepted in society or
Sami,
not.
And you're right. I mean, I know there were people who were saying, they had it coming. They had more money than sense. If they're going to get bolted into a steel and carbon submersible, titanium, that's their lookout. But it's also the fact that we have been encouraged to fear migrant crossings and migrants arriving in our countries, and countries are being paid to send them back or penalised for not sending them back. So naturally, you feel that with this, the narrative, how could they get a fair shake when it came to media coverage of what happened?
I think that's entirely, and I think that's one of the things that's really worrying now is that while this discussion is very beneficial, and I think it's fantastic, and I was just listening to it in the car, and I was really glad that this discussion is being brought, and that you brought Alan Kurdi's auntie to talk about this as well.
Well, I've got to congratulate my producer for finding her. Of course,
and to the team and to LBC. But what worries me the most is that von der Leyen, the EU Commission, went to Tunisia last week with the Italian Prime Minister and the Dutch Prime Minister to say to the Tunisian president, who seized all power in a coup, to say, we'll give you 1 billion euros if you can simply stop these ships from coming, if you can take the responsibility for preventing these migrants from coming to Europe. The idea being is the attitude is not how can we ensure safe passage, how can we ensure this doesn't happen again. The approach is one of, listen, we don't want these guys coming to Europe. Please make sure they don't come off your shores and come towards us, and use whatever means that you want. Qais Said, of course, in Tunisia embarked in racist rhetoric about Africans trying to come to Tunisia to cross the border. The point here being is that this desensitization is not in the media. It's throughout, even in policy making towards the migrants.
And of course, sorry, just to remind listeners, it was also a big topic, a swing topic in the Turkish presidential election, where both the candidates were using the Syrian refugees that were being housed in Turkey as a political football. Turkey, of course, is being paid $1 billion by the EU to keep Syrian refugees in Turkey, and it uses that as a bargaining chip with the EU.
Not only that, Kılıçdaroğlu, who was the rival candidate to Erdogan, actually said in a statement on Twitter, the video is still there, where he says, if you vote for me, I will get rid of 10 million refugees that have infiltrated our veins, he said. So the idea being that it's become a sort of a football. And I think what hurts me the most when I hear about the discussion is that you can accept it from politicians somewhat in that they're trying to score points or the like, but the ordinary civilian, the ordinary people, society needs to wake up to just how desensitized we've become to the plight of human beings. Because today it's them, and you never know what will happen in this world in 50, 60 years.
Tomorrow it could be your family, your nephew. And we spoke to the auntie, as you will have heard, of Alan Kurdi just before you came on, and that was a very powerful conversation.